Welcome on behalf of all of us here as the CEO Roundtable participants, and in particular on behalf of Inbay, who are hosting today's webinar. So what we've been doing is over the last few months, we've been pulling together a range of MSPs and their CEOs to come together and share some of the best practice advice, knowledge, tools, tricks and techniques that they have available to them. So I'm really pleased that we've been able to get Alan, Ian and Andre today, who we'll introduce in a moment. And I'm really pleased to be able to sort of moderate this session today. Over the course of the next few months, we'll be publishing some materials from each of these, and we'll be hosting some other themes as we go. So if anyone has any thoughts on particular themes that we could roll into the CEO roundtables, you'd be really welcome to share those into the chat. And if you have any questions in today's session, then please just drop that into the chat within this meeting, within this Zoom meeting. And Francis from Inbay will be moderating questions as we go throughout the session. So from the last session that we did the end of last year around the impact of COVID on MSPs, and everything that goes along with being an MSP, running an MSP. A white paper is in the process of being produced, and that will be published shortly. So that will be coming out over the next week or two, and I think everyone will find that a really interesting read. And we'll be doing the same, or Inbay will be doing the same from this session today, publishing a white paper of some of the main content to come out of it. So the subject for today is finding, winning and retaining customers. And having done some work with all three of our CEOs today, I'm very pleased to have assembled these three gentlemen to share their ideas and experience with us. So we're just going to do a quick intro, starting with Ian Snow. Ian, perhaps you could just do a quick 30-second intro to yourself and to CT for us, please. Ian, we can't hear you. You're muted, Ian. Okay, let's go to Alan, who's not muted, and we'll come back to you, Ian. No offense. Alan, could you give us a quick intro to yourself and Silver Lining?
Sure. So my name's Alan Packer. I'm the founder and managing director of Silver Lining Convergence, and we also have a group company at Moso. So we're a group of two organisations, a channel-led business and a managed service organisation. My day-to-day focus is running a managed service business, and we provide managed services for IT, telecommunications, and security to all kinds of businesses in the UK and Europe, and well, as far as Canada, New Zealand, and Australia as well, and we focus on solutions and creating solutions for businesses and organisations.
Great, thank you very much, Alan, and welcome. Ian, I think we can now hear from you.
Yeah, I'm back now. Couldn't unmute myself. Sorry. Very similar to Alan. I'm MD at Central Technology, again, an MSP, telecoms, IT and security, based up in Chesterfield in the East Midlands, and primarily serving regional MSPs. So from, well, Yorkshire and the East Midlands primarily is where we service. So all UK based, other than where customers do have overseas sites, which are generally within Europe if they do. So yeah, it's we are 50 people, SME based. Typical customer is anything from 10 users through to 400 or 500 IT users.
Great, thanks very much, Ian. Okay, Andre, let's hear about you and Cloudlogic.
Hi there. So yes, I'm Andre Vaux, Managing Director of Cloudlogic. We're an Oxfordshire-based MSP. We cover the Thames Valley, also central London, and we do have some clients that have overseas offices in Europe, North America, etc., Singapore. So we've had some nice project work over the last few years. Unfortunately, I didn't get to go on any of that, but there you go. Yeah, so we've grown up as kind of a an IT business, and then as we've grown and we've learned, we've turned into a managed service provider, being very proactive. We're a team of 18, and I guess we're always looking. The right client for us is, not always about size. It's about understanding that they need to invest.
Great, thanks very much. And knowing all of your businesses reasonably well, I know there'll be lots of ideas and content here today. So let's get straight into it. Actually, Matt, do you want to just do a quick hello to you and to Inbay before we go in too far into it?
Yeah, sure. Well, thank you, Tim. So Matt Tacker, CEO of Inbay for the last 18 months. Inbay provide white labeled outsourced services to managed service providers such as NOC support, service desks, dedicated technicians, and more recently security as well. I've personally been working in the channel for 15 plus years and in tech for 20 years.
Great. It's hard to believe, but it is 20 years.
It is.
Okay, so we're going to start with the area of finding customers and how that's working at the moment, and has there been any change since the pandemic, etc. Let's go straight into that with Ian. So Ian, how are you gaining your new customers at the moment?
I think, well, it's probably the hardest question in the IT industry, I think, isn't it? Really, to be honest, over well, forever, really. It's always been the biggest challenge that we've had is really identifying those, I suppose, the leads, getting the right conversations going. I guess for us, the fundamentals have changed, and what we see in our customer base, in that SME customer base, really is it's down to reputation, and then to a certain extent still locality. Believe it or not, are the sort of the two most important things that we see. I suppose the real thing over the years, we've probably had success in many different ways of locating or trying to find those and generate those leads. But at the moment, with sort of over the last 12 months, with the way things have changed, is we sort of switched from what was working very well for us for probably 12 months before the pandemic, which was running a lot of events and joint events with other local businesses. So that was sort of the core of our marketing strategy for 2019 and 2020, and was going to be for 2021, but we had to change it. So that worked really well, and that was all based around building reputation and sharing knowledge really within the local business community, which is why we were spending quite a lot of time working with other local businesses as well, to try and sort of broaden that sort of education piece that we were doing. So what we've done now, and what we're finding is working at the moment, obviously everything's sort of switched to being online, so we're applying the same principles really in terms of the knowledge sharing, but we've really started to focus on the social media side, which we've always done, but it's just become the primary focus around that building of knowledge and reputation on social media, LinkedIn in particular. But we've become probably more focused on it rather than a scattergun approach, which I think is potentially where we're starting to see some success. So we will be sort of very active in the sharing of posts and knowledge sharing on the various platforms. But then it still comes down to those fundamentals, which is this hard work and hard legwork. So we will look to then follow those up and try and generate calls and conversation off the back of those, the activity that we see around the LinkedIn. In particular the LinkedIn and the social posts. We will then look to try and generate conversation with those people who are interacting with us through the new business sales team, who will look to get what's now virtual meetings booked in, typically initially to have those conversations. So that's really starting to work. It took a little bit of getting the momentum within it. As I say, the fundamentals that sit behind it stay the same. I think what we've had to try and change is how we generate those first conversations is what we've changed. The reputation building the knowledge sharing, that sort of approach, it stayed the same. It's sort of the front end that we've had to adjust, really. So the LinkedIn's working well, following it with targeted conversations with people about their business. And I think what we're finding is people want to talk about the business, how things are going through the pandemic, much more than potentially they were before. So once we get those conversations going, it is working very well for us, and we're starting to see some success. It's just taken probably 2 or 3 months really to really start to build that, and some sort of hard work there.
It does seem that people are really thinking about this time as a bit of a drive to change stuff in their business, doesn't it? So, Alan, does that resonate with you? And what sort of tactics are you using to find your customers?
Sure. I think, like Ian, like we had a very clear sort of roadmap of strategy for 2020, 2021. We actually had arranged our biggest ever year for doing physical events. So we were going to have a significant presence in a number of exhibitions, big presence planned as well. So we were starting 2020 with a great amount of momentum and confidence that we were going to be taking great products that we've been developing in the previous couple of years to the market. And of course, that whole world came crashing down very quickly. And so we ended up in a similar position where you suddenly find you're trying to think about how do we reinvent ourselves from a marketing perspective and a sales perspective to attract new customers. We approached it. We looked at these challenges in a number of ways. Firstly, I think the question about how do you find new customers? If you were asking me the question, how do you find new business? Then it's one and the same question, but it's slightly different, because a big part of our focus was, okay, within our existing customer base, what opportunities are there for us to enhance our service offering to those customers, partly in the new world that they're in, and partly with regard to products that we haven't explored yet, that could provide them with with additional benefits. Hence, our engagement with Inbay is a good example, right? So looking at ways that we can make strategic partnerships work to enhance our offering to those customers. So we did a lot of looking at existing customers and enhancing the average revenue from those customers, but also delivering a much more comprehensive product set into those customers, and then utilizing opportunities around things like obviously the change in the world. I mean, our teams were very busy, probably as much as everyone else's in the early part of last year. I don't think we've ever deployed as many seats of Cisco AnyConnect, for example. We were into the tens of thousands of seats of Cisco AnyConnect users. So there was a lot of opportunity around things like, enhancing customers' environments where they were using existing technologies, but perhaps because now you're going from a few users to a lot of users, getting things out there like, two-factor authentication, those kind of things. So that was one part of our strategy in terms of new business. And then it was taking those kind of solutions and trying to then position them as, well, look, we've managed to fix these problems in this new world for our customers, or enhance their home working experience and deliver them to other people. A lot of those physical events that we were talking about became virtual events. We actually stripped back a lot and didn't attend a lot of those virtual events, because for us, we didn't feel like the impact was going to be very effective at the time. And also, it was a bit of an unknown world. So of the probably 15 to 20 events that we thought we were going to be attending last year, probably more than 20 actually, we probably ended up attending 4 or 5 virtual events, but focused on making the most of having a really sound strategy around those events and those customers. And I think, I'm not sure about anyone else, but for us, a lot of our initial plans were temporary. We thought, well, we've got to ride this out for a few months. So there wasn't very much an early strategy around how is this going to work for us long term. As we got towards the latter part of last year, really had to start looking and focusing on, okay, we're moving far more into a digital world. So to find new business, we've got to push into that digital space, and that has to become our priority rather than trying to fill the gap temporarily with some digital until we get back to lots of exhibitions and physical events. And so I guess, now that's become our key focus is a far more robust digital strategy around reaching people in that way.
Let's come back to that. I want to find out a bit more about that. Andre, just to quickly come to you then around sort of some of the main ideas. Any differences there in terms of the way that you're taking Cloudlogic to market and winning business?
Yeah, so we sort of historically had a more of a bumpy ride of trying to find clients. I mean, historically, we've always found them via referral, or it's been through building up, retaining clients and, like you said, Alan, looking at your existing customer base to see where you can increase revenue. But yeah, I would say over the last sort of 18 months, we've changed what we've been doing quite drastically, because it turns out that the worst thing you can market for is IT support. People don't, as far as we can see, people don't really search for IT support, and the people that are searching for IT support, they're only doing it once in a blue moon. I mean, I think I read a stat somewhere that companies change their IT provider sort of every 7 to 9 years, and so being in the right place at the right time, spending your money wisely in the right LinkedIn campaign or wherever it might be, it's quite a slim chance that you're actually going to pick that up.
We must all be providing them as such a great service.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's for all of us. Thank you. but what we've actually found more, that works more is to actually market for things around it. So things like 365 backup, or, a disaster recovery guide or business continuity guide. Instead of going for what you actually want, we market around, downloading free ebooks or something like that. And we've had some good engagement that way, and probably mainly off the back of emails that we've sent out. We've done quite a bit of LinkedIn as well, which has been reasonably successful. Although every route that you choose to finding these clients has its downsides. Like, for example, LinkedIn, people that use LinkedIn, and if they want to download your ebook, and you've got gated content, so they have to put in they have to release their contact details. Most people will be using their personal email address. So of course, then if you want to email them, you have to email their personal email address. But then I don't think people like replying, on their personal email address for something that is actually business related. So then you have to go and find other tools to try and track down what their actual email address is, etc. So we found more, we've had more success in sort of marketing, around IT support, as opposed to actually, everybody wants that support or managed IT service contract, but it's doing stuff around it, which has sort of attracted those leads for us. And yeah, I would say probably most of what's come in though is via email. So doing email campaigns, and having a link in the email to say, this is, thanks for downloading our DR recovery ebook or whatever. Click here if you want to chat for 20 minutes. And we've had quite a lot of people clicking that link, and suddenly things appearing in the diary, which has been great.
And so Alan, when it comes to your kind of online strategy, has that been targeted at businesses as a whole, or has it been targeted at particular vertical markets?
So a bit of both, but we've really undertaken two fundamental kind of plans in terms of this change. So one of the things that we've picked up on from a strategy perspective is we've got a few kind of products that are in our own portfolio. So we have a PCI compliance security product. So when we're delivering telephony, we tend to deliver our PCI compliance product with it to make it level 1 certified. And what you find is a lot of customers are saying, can you integrate this into our CRM system, or our policy administration system? So financial services and insurance is a big vertical for us. And then what we found is that, well, if we've integrated to those systems, then there's a big target audience there for us. So on one hand, we're taking product and we're looking at where have we created integration and customization that there's a big customer base, and one of those policy administration providers, for example, has got 5,000 customers in the UK. They've got 5,000 people using their platform, and brokers. So for us, that gives us a very targeted audience. We can look at saying, well, we have a product that's unique to you because we're integrated to a platform you're already using. And if you take something like hosted telephony, which of course is a volume business in a lot of cases, and for a lot of businesses, a race to the bottom. That's not a market we're not pitching 5, 10, 15 seat hosted telephony products, because it's a very, very competitive market, and a lot of people, if they want that cheap service in that area, they're not really focusing on support and other factors. So for us, it's about taking those products and adding wraps to them, and then pushing them out and getting those communication paths, either through partnership or through digital, by finding those customers that are using those products, to highlight why we've got a difference in the USP. And that's probably, in the last 6 to 8 weeks, been our biggest lead generator.
I'm interested in your views on that, Ian, in terms of vertical markets. And I just, before we do that, I'd just say to anyone, if you've got any comments, aside from any questions, if there are any comments or feedback on some of the things that you're doing, please drop them in the chat to everyone. I'd be really interested in any vertical markets that you're finding more successful than others. Thanks for that, Alan. So Ian, what about some vertical markets for you?
Yeah, it's a similar thing really in where we're looking, I guess. Yeah, you just got to be careful. I suppose one thing, just before I say, I know you're looking at things that don't work, certainly things like AdWords, as Andre was saying, really trying to get IT support. We know things like Google AdWords in our industry around IT support can very quickly become very expensive and don't really get you what you need. So you do have to be careful around that. So we've had a few learnings of what doesn't work as well, and certainly that's certainly one that, in our experience, to steer away from when you're focusing at IT support and not some of the surrounding sort of services, as Andre said. In terms of verticals, yeah, we were looking at a similar thing. Our customer base is quite diverse. We haven't got really a niche market, so it tends to be put around because of our geographic location. But we are, obviously, there are those industries that are really struggling at the moment. We've got a lot of manufacturing. They seem to be either storming or really struggling. There's sort of no in between, depending on I guess how quickly they've been able to adapt. But we're certainly looking at the legal market at the moment. The legal industry is one area that we've seen a lot of activity, and I guess a lot of willingness to discuss how they're working, which is, I think, it's a common theme listening to Alan and Andre there. Really, it's about finding that right customer who really wants to talk, wants to engage about the benefits of working with an outsourced IT provider. We certainly seem to be getting a lot of good conversations within the legal sector. So that's one area we've sort of picked on. I said, well, let's try and have some focused marketing around that sector and build some. Again, it's building that reputation, that specific reputation, and maybe sharing some of the learnings out of that sector. So yeah, similar approach.
I think the legal market does seem to have been pretty resilient during this time last year, and from a report I heard about last week, seems to be projected to invest significantly in technology, based on the way that the legal market is going to work going forwards following this. The office footprint is going to be significantly lower as a result. Let's move on to our next area around winning customers. So Alan, how has the art of selling changed for Silver Lining?
Well, massively. I mean, we in the last couple of months we've been seeing the completion of projects that have in their entirety only been initiated through online virtual meetings and virtual project initiation and management. So we've had 2 projects complete in the last this month, in the last couple of weeks, that we've never actually met the customer. And so from a sales perspective, it changes the world quite significantly, in that the engaging with those customers, obviously, is a very different experience. And we're all getting very used to video calls and video meetings. But also, I think the biggest challenge, I think, in terms of how salespeople have got to adapt, is that it is a big part of selling a solution to a customer is about learning and understanding the customer and their requirements. And it's no good someone, asking someone, are they hungry, and then offering them a tin of beans. You need to kind of really know a lot more about that customer, what their requirement is, what their business challenges are. And when you can go and spend time in that customer and you get a feel for it, and you're in the building and you're walking around and you're shown stuff, and you get to look over an agent's shoulder and look at their process when they're on a call, a lot of that's lost in this new world. And instead you're dealing, obviously with a much narrower set of people in a separated, more disparate way. And so I think one of the things about this art of selling is that people, from a sales perspective, it's learning how to still try and learn and gather that information in a new way. How do I get the information I need, and how do I make sure that these products are relevant, and how do I understand the solution, and also how do I demonstrate that to the customer, because there's another challenge in its own right, in that, again, I don't know about other people, but I'm a real wallboard freak. So if I go into a meeting, unless I've got a set of crayons and something I can draw on, I'm a bit lost normally. And so I am having to, in that method of presenting and trying to get information across, I think there's a lot more planning involved. I used to go into meetings and spend a lot of time on a wallboard and draft stuff out. Now, what I've encouraging our team to do is pre-thinking about customer environments and stuff, and having a lot more graphical representation ready for calls, so that where you can't draw stuff on a wallboard, you can kind of draw people's attention to imagery and diagrams and things. And then it's about, I think, focusing a lot more on the product. It's a bit more difficult to create a social connection in virtually than it is when you're in the flesh chatting to someone. On the way out from a meeting room to the car, you're having a chat, you're talking about your car, you're talking about your dog, your kids, whatever else. And a lot of that, again, we tend to be more rigidly time framed in Teams meetings, and so trying to get that kind of level of personality is important, but also it draws more focus, I think, onto the product and the service that's being offered. And so really getting that kind of understanding. I think there was a question about within the question or the preparation. I know we talked about younger generation. I think actually for the younger generation, this is probably actually a lot easier. Because they're used to a lot more video calling and a lot of this way of working. But for some people, video calling and this way of working has presented more of a challenge. But I think in the main, most people have overcome that now. I still think that there's a desire for people to be able to get back to a more traditional method of engagement. And I think that's important as well.
We had a brief window, didn't we, in the summer or the autumn time, where you could actually go out and see people, but it closed again quite quickly. And I suppose there's a balance there, isn't there, between, if you've got lots of leads, virtual meetings can be great for doing a volume of meetings, can't they, and using your time really efficiently. But you're right, those subtleties and that sort of intangible stuff around getting to know your clients is you just can't pick it up on something like this. Ian, I know things are going really well around new business. So perhaps you could just share with us a bit about what's going on and how the art of selling has changed at CT.
Yeah, Alan's covered quite a lot off there, and a lot of really similar points. I think the answer for me is sort of yes and no. Has it changed to a certain extent? I'm not sure that the art of selling has changed. I think the tools that are available have changed, and there's a lot of learning around that. I think really it's still about personalities. It's still about building that rapport. We're selling a solution ultimately that is in this industry is it's a long-term trusted relationship that you've got to build over time, and therefore trying to do that over a Zoom call or a Teams call is much more difficult to start to build that trust, as Alan touched on. So I think the fundamentals that sit behind it are still there. It's just the tools that we've got have changed, and it's learning a different set of skills to get you to the, you know, that point where someone's prepared to make what is ultimately a big move for them to move their IT support, which is what we ultimately wanted to do. One thing that we've seen, and I guess sort of touching on your point, Tim, around where the Teams and Zoom calls are working really well, is to get those initial calls. So sort of the qualification calls, if you like, or we sort of term them pre-qualification calls. People are much more willing to have a 15-minute conversation with you around their requirements, or to establish whether there is a match, whether they are the right type of customer over a Teams call, than they are to book in, you know, to see you face to face, as you typically people are trying to do. So we're finding that works really well as a pre-qualification to discuss, is there a fit, you know, can we help them, is the value we can add, are they the right type of customer, and people are much more willing to have those quick, you know, video conference calls for 15-20 minutes, and it's easier to get those booked in than it is to get to see them face to face. So that's working really well and probably helping us get more efficient than when ultimately people do want to see you face to face, because we are still seeing that where ultimately they'll want a face to face meet. Although we have closed some purely through virtual meetings, most of them want to get out at some point in time.
I think that's a good point, isn't it? Like, we're all probably used to using our time efficiently around things like telephone interviews with, you know, prospective staff. You've got a high volume of applicants. You know, that's obviously a good way to qualify. And actually, I think there is a place that I know your team is finding really useful to do that in the sales process. So Andre, what about the art of selling? And I know you're very hands-on in terms of actually developing the business yourself as the leader of the business, which is great. Tell us a bit more about how you're doing it.
Well, I think I would just echo around, you know, the whole having these meetings remotely. It can be really useful because, like I said earlier, we've had people, we've been doing email campaigns where then people have clicked a link and booked a 20-minute consultation, and that is a really nice way of doing it, because that short time frame, if you have to go out and visit a company, that's going to be an hour, isn't it, by the time you've made coffee and all that kind of stuff. But actually, yes, it does have a negative effect as well. I mean, we've recently been going through trying to uplift an existing client to a substantially larger contract, and we had our game plan for how we wanted to do that. But actually, it's been a much longer process, and I do wonder if actually the reason it's been a longer process is because we haven't taken some of the social cues that we would have probably got had we been in the room. Just that general more chit chat. Whereas, if you're in a Zoom meeting like this with a whole bunch of people, everybody hears everything. The dynamics are just completely different. And of course, that obviously feeds into the business culture as well. And I know we're not here to talk about the culture and trying to keep the team going and everything, but obviously that's had a whole effect on that as well, in terms of trying to keep a good culture in the business. I think the other thing about selling as well is about getting the right information, and you can quite easily be tripped over by a headline piece of information which is actually completely irrelevant. So I remember going out to a prospect last year, 100 staff, this sounds great, but actually when we went out there, it was not a manufacturing company, it was a distributor, and their margins, although they had 100 people, their margins were so tight. Actually, their budget for stuff was tiny, and there was no way they would have invested in working with us. And so it's not always about, so when you're trying to find those leads and have those conversations, you have to look harder. We wouldn't want to talk to a 10-person business, but if it's a 10-person business that needs call recording, compliance stuff, they're going to they know that they're going to need to spend more money, and their sort of frame of mind around IT will be completely different. So I do think there's an element on now being more ruthless around leads. And yeah, in the past, we could have seen, oh, it's a 4-person business plus a dog. Oh, that sounds great. They sound really nice to work with. Well, we just wouldn't even, we'd be ruthless now. Just say, look, we're probably not the company that you're looking for. We're more working on a strategic level, etc. So yeah.
Thanks very much, Andre. That's really good. What's happened to your close ratios? Just real quick, kind of 1-sentence answers. Ian?
As we're up across the board, existing and new.
Alan?
Yeah, I mean, working in partnership obviously is a much route of least resistance into customers. So where a lot of these opportunities work at the moment in partnership, because we're delivering a solution that's already integrated and we're a warm approach. Very high close ratios on that stuff.
And Andre?
For new business, it's about the same.
It's just interesting, the whole virtual area of kind of developing relationship and taking a prospect through to being sold. I know that Inbay have, as a business that sells globally, Inbay actually seems to have perfected the art of selling virtually, because a lot of the time salespeople are not sent out to North America or Australia, etc. Are they, Matt? They're you've managed to.
No, what I will say, Tim, is we used to get a lot of our lead generation. So that's where we really had to change, is our effort on marketing. A lot of our lead generation used to come from the top events we used to go to, so the top industry events. So the difference for us is obviously we sell into the IT channel. So we used to sponsor events such as DattoCon, Empower from SolarWinds as well, etc. and so forth, and also Network Group as well, a local UK buying group. So we could have that personal touch where we could go to that event, meet people, do a lot of qualification while we're at that event. Of course, all that has changed recently. But you're quite right, we are used to selling globally anyway. But what we've done in regards to changing our selling is a lot more effort on the qualification, like we've heard from others already. Make sure that we really explore whether our solution is actually right for that customer before we go so far down a path, because sometimes it just, it may not be right, it might not be the right timing, might not be the right fit, might be too much change for that MSP to put in place. So yeah, we are used to doing it, but a number of changes implemented throughout this period.
And just before we move on to kind of the whole area of retaining customers, again, just maybe a 1-sentence answer from each of you. I'm assuming that you found it easier to get sales out of your existing base virtually than you have done out of new business, or has it on the whole been easier to sort of transact with your existing customers through Teams and Zooms, etc.? Ian?
Yeah, definitely, because the relationship's already there, Tim. So it's just a change of tool. So for us, that's not really had much of an impact on the existing customer base, if I'm honest.
Alan?
Yeah, absolutely the same. I think, if you've got a strong, trusted relationship already, you come into this new virtual world, I think the customer sees this as a much safer route to go to a known quantity that they trust already to deliver a service, even if there's additional or new services that they need. So I think that, definitely.
Yeah. We found that even if you've maybe only met them once or twice, there might be a really new client, but the fact that you've had maybe even just a small number of face-to-face engagements with them has meant that actually they're very much more trusting of moving everything, including things like monthly service reviews to virtual meetings, because obviously it's been necessary. Which segues us nicely into the whole area of retaining customers and how that, how particularly your business does that. So, Andre, perhaps you could lead us off on that with some thoughts on how you've successfully retained customers at Cloudlogic.
Certainly. So kind of, retaining customers for us has been key over the years. We have a very low churn rate of customers, and I think ultimately it's easier to retain and grow customers than it is to find new ones, isn't it? We all know that. So I guess all in all, it's about engagement, and it's about account management. So for example, building in stickiness. So bundling products and services is a good starter, because if you're, if they're paying a price per head and it includes lots of things, it actually makes it harder for them to leave. And actually, if there is a problem, if you're not picking it up through regular engagement, they're more likely to come and talk to you anyway, because it's just harder for them to go. So I think bundling in stuff is a good way. And also, actually, most clients really like that, because it makes billing really simple. They're not getting invoices for lines that they just don't understand. I think that sort of multi-layer customer interaction is really important, and that's something we always try and work on at Cloudlogic. So I'll be having direct comms with my equal in the customer, and then one of our guys, Mark, our operations director, he'll be doing more, having interaction with the more middle management at the client. And then we're always talking to the team about doing a great job, and having having normal conversations with users. And I think that multi-level sort of interaction really helps, because actually it reduces the risk as well of them leaving. If you're only talking to one person in a customer, and that person leaves, you're right away, you're out on a limb, because you've got no other contacts there. So that multi-level engagement is really important. And also it's feedback as well. So I'm sure you've probably heard of CrewWho. So before we used CrewWho, we used to use the sort of feedback system built into Autotask. It was a bit cumbersome, because it's it's text based, and it doesn't look great. Whereas since changing to CrewWho, it's really, really easy for people just to give feedback. And so people give feedback with a smiley face, a medium face, or a sad face. They can almost get their voice heard straight away, so that they get a little you get a little bit of buy-in from the user. But also what we do is we actually then, all that customer feedback that we get, we report back to the customer on a monthly basis. So if we've had 20 great pieces of feedback with somebody saying, oh, Matt was a great guy, he got this sorted really quickly, we actually report that back to the director as well, so that they can see that we're doing a good job as well. So that then reinforces the whole, yes, we're doing a good job. I mean, obviously, if there's a bad piece on there, that will go on there too, but then that can create a nice talking point.
Yeah.
So I think overall retaining clients is really important. And again, I would say we've only lost 2 or 3 clients over the last 5 years, and they were all ones that we wanted to lose. So that was good.
Well, you can tell us a bit about how you managed to do that in a minute, then. We'll turn the question on its head. Ian, but before we get to that, thinking positively, how do you retain your clients, Ian?
I think Andre's covered a lot of it off. I guess it's simple to them, and it's really, really similar. Talk to them, talk regularly, talk to them about their business, and also as part of that, and know your failings as well. And really, if you understand the service levels that you're delivering, and if they do drop off, and none of us are perfect, if there's an issue, then deal with it. Pick the phone up, talk to the customer, deal with it head on. Don't shy away from it where you feel that sort of service levels have dropped, or if you've dropped the ball. And doing it again, really, I'm only repeated, to be honest, at multi-level, and that's what we find that works both ways as well, for when people are leaving, not just the contact, if the contact in the customer leaves, but if and we've been times at the moment, not even necessarily if staff leave, we've got account managers that we're promoting, and because they've got a strong relationship, the customer really wants them to stay as account managers rather than move up to account director, as we've got. And but if they've got multi-layers of contact, it has less impact. So we've got a service management team who are, again, regularly, at least they're talking to their customers at least weekly. Obviously, you've got the service desk myself. So it's getting those multi-layers really do help in keeping that contact.
And you've got a pretty significant investment in both account management and service management, haven't you? Do you want to just briefly talk about the difference between those two and sort of how you approach both of those?
Yeah, so we sort of introduced a service management team probably only about 18 months ago, maybe 2 years at the most, and actually just recruiting one other into the team this week, and we're rolling that out across all our customers as part of a new offering, a new IT support offering we've got, where we're trying to look and say, well, how do we add the most value? What the service management team do is a number of things. They're a little bit like our internal police. They sort of sit in between the sales and account management teams and the service teams and the delivery teams. So they will be almost in real time. They're looking at SLAs, projects that are ongoing, and they will deal with anything if they see the service levels that they think they might be about to slip, or we're coming up to SLA on the ticket and it looks like we might hit them. They'll pick up with the teams internally, and so they act as a bit of an internal police and quality control for us and keep us on track of the service levels that we want to offer. But similarly, if we have a major incident, if we have a large outage, they'll own that major incident management process. So what we used to do before, the technical teams will be trying to keep the customer up to date, or obviously they're trying to resolve what might be a major issue as well. The account manager will be getting involved, but they may be out of meetings. The service management team are office-based, so they will own that major incident management. So the comms into the customer is then, for us, we work on a 15-minute update. So whether that's pick the phone up or fire an email across just to let them know what's going on. And that's allowed the other teams to do what they need to do. And it's worked really well to the extent that we wanted to push that out so that we have a service manager aligned to every single customer. Not quite sure how we'll do it from our 4 and 5 user customers that we've still got from 15 years ago, but that's the plan.
Yeah, but and those that get it pay for it. It's built into the pricing and the cost.
Yeah, so we've got to get the pricing.
Yeah. Alan, give us your thoughts on retaining customers, and I'm going to move on to a couple of quick fire questions for the three of you.
So it's interesting what Ian was just saying there, actually. So I mean, we have a very focused kind of customer retention, but customer satisfaction program. So we broke it down to 3 areas, which is, making sure that the products we're providing are always providing good value, innovating to ensure we stay relevant to that customer, and service. And just to cover off where Ian was talking, looking at service last, interestingly, all 3 of those areas are very important. I mean, you can have great service and not be good value for money, in which case obviously people might not be able to afford. But interesting what Ian was saying there about we have a similar setup in that we have technical operations, customer operations, which is that kind of cog between technical and account management, and then we have customer account management. So we also have that structure of the layer in between. And we back in the start of sort of the pandemic, we enhanced that team actually to make it more focused on those managed service customers. And I think one of the important things is where a lot of stuff's being done remotely, and customers are often paying a lot of money for our kind of services, right? There's a lot of licensing costs, but managed service costs. People are an asset and an expensive resource. And so one of the things we did with our service was to increase. We have our what we'll call QBRs, quarterly business reviews with our customers from a managed service team perspective. Well, we've increased those to a monthly frequency from about March last year, so from pretty much the first lockdown, because there was less physical engagement with those customers. And I think one of the important things we do in that is that our team, our service management team as well, managed service team, they produce a report for the customer, which is presented in that, and it actually drills down into things like how many hours engineering and managed service time is used, what those tickets are used for. We proactively present our SLAs to the customer. And what we're really doing in that is, one, we're giving the customer information, but we're helping them see where their money's going, and that we are providing value for money in our service that we're giving them. Because If it's a bit of an unknown art in the background, and they don't really know what the money's being spent on, it's easy sometimes for them to not feel like they're getting value for money. So it's really important to present to your customers that actually there is you're doing a great job in the background, and that there is a lot going on. And the old swan paddling under the water thing is a great analogy there, right? So that's really important to us, and ensuring that engagement is there. The good value is very important in that in IT services, especially where there's commodity involved. So we often sell data connectivity and telephones and things. When you have long-standing customers, it's easy for them to kind of slip off the path of good value. Data circuit costs go down every 3 years, or in a linear fashion, but generally the renewals are every 3 years. And it's really important to proactively address those customers and make sure that they are paying competitive rates for any of those commodity-based items, because otherwise that's what gives your competition a hook in and a route in the door. And also, if you leave someone for 7 or 8 years paying a 7 or 8 year old price for a lease line, fundamentally that can erode trust with the customer, and that's an important factor. So one of my most painful meetings with a customer was when I went to them and they were spending £200,000 a month with us on non-geographic traffic, and I had to say to them, listen guys, this isn't efficient, you should be moving to O3. And the whole meeting effectively was a meeting to talk about saving them 90% of what they were spending with us on non-geographic traffic. But if we hadn't have done that, somebody else would have done, and then there would have been nothing left. And then innovating is important because it makes you more relevant to that customer. If you can innovate within the customer, if you can deliver solutions that are more relevant to them, enhance their business. One of our customers used to spend about £15,000 a month with us. They now spend about £150,000 a month with us. The difference is we've created products that they've integrated to their own product to sell to their customers. And that obviously makes them a bigger value customer to us, but also makes us far more integral to their operation.
That's a really good point. I'm going to come back to that in a second, actually, because that links into one of the questions we've got. But just a couple of quick fire questions for the three of you. Alan, average number of times you see your customers each year? Is it now once a month?
Average number of times, once a month at least, yeah. Once
a month at least. Ian?
The same, other than some of the really small legacy customers that we've got.
Okay. And Andre?
Yeah, it depends on the size of the client, either quarterly or monthly.
Quarterly or monthly. Okay, so somewhere between 4 times a year and 12 times a year seems to be the norm. At least once a month in the case of Alan's, and that's certainly the case for us. We diarise them out annually in advance, and the series is there as a standing series on a monthly basis. Okay, and then just one other question in relation to whether you group your customers. Do you rank your customers into kind of high, medium, and low priority, or gold, silver, bronze, or do you use any sort of ranking system for your customer bases, Alan?
All our customers are as important as each other, of course, but look, customers pay for different levels of support, so there's obviously a priority factor there. So yeah, we have a ranking system in terms of depending on the support level that a customer pays for. In terms of importance, actually our internal SLAs around customer contact and customer resolution are the same, but if it's a 5-man business or a 5,000-man business, obviously if you've got 2 problems and you've got 5,000 people affected over here and 5 people affected over there, you're always looking at volume to try and minimize impact. But yeah, so that absolutely, in terms of what customers pay for, there'll be different levels of service for those customers.
Okay. Ian?
Similar. So we don't not based on size and spend with us, but it will be based on the service. We have 3 different service levels on the support offerings. That differentiates them. Obviously, from a commercial viewpoint, we know the customers and we know which ones are large ones, but the SLAs and everything is driven by the solution that they're on, not by their spend with us.
Okay, thanks. And Andre, anything else? Anything different to that?
No, we kind of have 2. So
yeah. Okay, we started just a couple of minutes after 3. So in the next 5 minutes, I'm just going to go through we're going to have to do some quick fire answers on these 5 questions as well. So I'm just going to open it up to the 3 of you. If there's anything you want to come in on, anything that's particularly now your focus around differentiating your business.
I think for us is the real differentiator that we're sort of pushing is that it's about the customer's business, not about the technology, and that's the focus, the real focus that we'll take, and I've done for a little while, and we're staying on that, and certainly that's where when the competition that we're certainly coming up against locally tends not to spend as much time at the front, and this is at the front end as well, sort of understanding the business. We got some feedback from a tender. I don't like tender processes, but we went into one locally, and although we didn't win it, and it turns out we're up against 16 other people, which is one of the reasons I don't like doing them in the first instance, but there was a few other reasons for doing this one. But the feedback was that nobody else took as much time and effort to understand them at the front end, their business, and what or their organisation and what they wanted to achieve. And that's what we're finding when we're talking to customers as the differentiator, that we start that right at the front end in really understanding the business, and it's part of the qualification process as well. So we're focusing on that rather than particular technologies.
For us,
thanks,
Alan. Yeah, I mean, one is investing in infrastructure so we can differentiate ourselves. So we invest a lot in infrastructure. We've just we've got a press release going out this week about a big project we just worked on with a large company based in South Korea. And the reason that they chose us is because we weren't AWS or Azure, so we were able to deliver them an infrastructure as a service project with a greater flexibility around networking and things. But that's because of investing in infrastructure that's allowed us to do that. So that's been a great project for us to work on. And then, I've mentioned it a number of times, but integration, we're focusing on where we've carried out integration to other partners, using that USP where we can, speak to their customers to say we are the only provider of, PCI security services, or the only provider of contact center that has complete integration to a product that you're already using, and therefore we can make your life easier. So it's those 2 things really.
That sort of links on to the next question actually, which is around the kind of building an area of sort of core expertise that actually goes to the heart of some of your clients' business processes. That's obviously a great example. Ian, Andre, do you have any others? Anything around? Certainly that in the discussions I've had with you both, there seems to be an opportunity to kind of move in that direction through software development and integrations, doesn't there?
Yeah, I think we tend to work with partners in that. So a lot of the work we do, we identify areas of and where the real value add around efficiencies and how end users are working. Particularly some of the stuff we see around spreadsheets, everyone sees, and the number of spreadsheets that are out there and the inefficiencies around huge amounts of work being done around spreadsheets. At the moment, we've got a couple of partners that we'll use if we identify in areas like that, whether to help from a development point of view. Although we've got our own developers in house, they work on our own stuff. I think it's definitely on our roadmap as an area to look to potentially develop in house.
Okay, the final question, just in the interest of time, is around: has anyone made a success of actually getting your technical teams to uncover opportunities within your clients or referrals into brand new businesses? Has anyone managed to crack that?
I always think it's a bit tricky to try and get the engineers to think commercially, because they always have that mindset of wanting to fix things. I don't know if anyone else ever sees that. But
what you were about to say sounded like you maybe had something that you were going to share.
Yeah, we definitely have. I think where we own some of our own products, of course, and our own infrastructure. Technically, some of the guys, obviously, if you can get them excited about something, then and they're excited about what they're doing, then of course they can project that excitement onto the customer. But also, absolutely, it tends to be obviously in existing customers, opportunities get highlighted where they'll come back and say, look, I've just been speaking to this customer about this, and look, you know, definitely they would benefit from, you know, these services or this infrastructure or these things, and I think, yeah, so keeping them engaged and then being excited about the product, but also having a big involvement in that kind of infrastructure development and process means that we do definitely get some of that. Is there a greater opportunity for it? I think that it does depend on the mindset, because I think, like Andre just said, you do get some engineers that are very much just focused on the technical piece, and sometimes you have the opposite problem with engineers, where they'll go and solve problems for customers for free or workarounds and things. And actually,
we love those.
Absolutely, and you know, you suddenly find yourself looking at something and thinking, why is this configuration in here? And it's like, oh well, I did that configuration because it meant they didn't have to buy these licenses. And you kind of think, yeah, kind of like not quite the point, but yeah, exactly. So
exactly. You're not moving into an account management role. Okay, I'm going to bring it to a close. I just want to first of all thank Matt and Francis and the team at Inbay for putting this on and getting us all together to discuss these themes. There'll be some follow-up around some outputs around the recording, and also the white paper that will come out of this that Inbay will circulate. In particular, thank you very much to Alan, to Andre, and to Ian for giving us your insights. I've had some great feedback directly to me and into the group for the people that were able to make it today. So thank you very much. Hope the rest of the day goes well, and we can all at some stage see each other in the real world, even the real world. So great. Thanks very much indeed, everyone, for joining, and we're going to end the session there.